I'm not going to introduce the panelists, I'll just tell you who they are, but it's all in the program. So on my immediate left, I have Richard representing Ariane Space, Mr. Fu representing China Great Wall, Kula representing ILS, Nakamura-san representing Mitsubishi, and at the end, but don't know mean the least, Barry representing SpaceX. I think Ariane Space is sabotaging my mic.
Just because you never bought a launch from Ariane, right?
Exactly, yes. I think I'm losing something. Okay. You're bad. Sorry about this. About a month ago, I sent all the panelists some questions, and basically it was, where does your company see itself going? What's the forecast for your payload size and quantity for the next X years? And is your price going to go up and down? And like true suppliers, none of them replied. I had to press them, and then 2 came in very quickly, and the rest came in dribs and drabs, and one actually sent the information about 7 o'clock this morning. But some of the responses, I got back some very interesting comments, which I think we all know, and if we'd been sitting here yesterday, they'd all be very relevant. Larger satellites because of electronic propulsion, Ka-band heavy satellites, requirement for dual launch capability, more antennas on the satellites, export credit capability, which people have got to have, everyone's got to have a 5-meter fairing, and we've got some ITAR issues. And then this morning, SpaceX came along and said, we foresee a launch costing $7 million. Well, okay, let's ignore the 7. Let's say $15 million. I think as Tom Choi said, at $7 million, $15 million, every operator would change their game plan completely. Every supplier would change their game plan completely. We wouldn't be building satellites exactly as we are today. So a lot of these questions, I think, it might be interesting to go on that and say, where do you see your companies if you're going to compete with a $15 million launch program? So Richard, where do you see your company competing with a $15 million launch?
Am I connected? Yes.
Yes.
You've raised the question immediately with Barry, which is SpaceX is an interesting phenomenon. We saw it, and you just mentioned it. I thought it was 5 or 7 or 15 million.
Why don't you talk about Ariane Space rather than SpaceX first? Where would you compete with a $15 million?
I've got to talk about what I'm competing with.
All right. Okay.
So I think because that then predicates exactly how we will compete when we analyse what we're competing with. Obviously, we like to analyse the competition. So today, SpaceX hasn't launched into the geostationary orbit yet, but they're doing very well, and their progress is going forward amazingly well. What I'm discovering in the market, though, is that SpaceX primarily seems to be selling a dream, which is good. We should all dream. I think the $5 million launch or $15 million is a bit of the dream. Personally, I think reusability is a dream. And I think recently I was at a session where I was told that there's no recovery plan because they're not going to have any failures. So I think that's a part of a dream. So at the moment, I feel that we're looking, and you're presenting to me, how am I going to respond to a dream? And my answer to respond to a dream is, first of all, you don't wake people up. They have to wake up on their own. And then once the market has woken up to the dream and the reality, then we'll compete with that.
But they are looking at a price which is about half yours today.
It's a dream.
Well, all right. Supposing that you wake up and they're there, what would Ariane Space do?
We would have to react to it. They're not supermen, so whatever they can do, we can do. We would then have to follow. But today, at the moment, we don't see it as a reality.
Super women on our staff.
Yeah.
So, really, it's a theoretical question at this moment in time.
Yeah, I personally don't believe it's going to be theoretical for that much longer. They've done everything they've almost said they can do. That's true. But, Mr. Fu, you're probably the next cheapest in terms of launch. if you hadn't got an ITAR situation,
Right.
what would happen with you?
I think for the price, if we think from the market economy, it is decided by demand and supply. So I think from the supply side, you can see on this stage, we are the supplier for the launch services, but I think many people would agree that the supply is not so stable. Sometimes we can encounter failure, sometimes some systems are still have to be proven. So on our side, for long march, the issue is ITAR, as you say, and gave a good summary at the beginning. For us, we are making efforts to keep our price as we were just a few years ago. So it is a challenge for us because in China, everything, the price is coming up instead of coming down. The labor, the material, and everything. And also the headache for us is like a foreign exchange rate between our currency, RMB yuan, and US dollar. So it is really the challenge for us to keep the price down. But fortunately, we are also making our next generation of launcher, like the Long March 5 and this kind of theory. We will have the capability like the dual launch. With this kind of approach, we hope we can keep the price down and meet the demands of the operators.
Cooler.
Well, if you're talking about a $15 million launch, I mean, that comes from a paradigm change. The way we're doing things, I mean, we can't beat that price. But on the other hand, our future launches, our family, Angara family, I mean, it's trying to break up the size that you launch so the price comes down with the weight that you're launching. I mean, we're not doing a great paradigm change. It's trying to maintain the cost or the price and trying to get the price triggered to the mass you're launching. So that's where we'd go.
Nakamura-san?
Yes. Probably all the delegate or representatives think that H2A or amateur launch services is rather expensive. That is a real issue. But SpaceX is a real commercial provider, we think, only. So therefore, we need to learn from SpaceX. But now, Japanese government and also MHI decided to start next generation launch vehicle study. The launch vehicle is mainly focused on the customer oriented to satisfy the customer demand. So including attractive pricing. So therefore, the important point such a next generation launch vehicle is the scheme. From the past development of the H2A or H2B, JAXA, Japanese government agency, is responsible for the development. However, now it's HX or H3. For the H3, we MHI also probably our main developing manufacturing company. So therefore, we think we are able to reduce something like cost drastically. But as of today, we think we need to learn many lessons learned from SpaceX, we think. That's all.
Yeah.
A couple comments, please. So one, to address the dream bit, I think it was a dream, in fact, for a private company to be able to go to space station and to be able to bring products to space station and return that vehicle intact and bring experiments back to Earth. So yes, that was a dream, and we've realized that dream, and we're going to continue to realize these dreams. That said, I want to address the other part that I think is actually important. I don't think it's actually about SpaceX competing with everybody on this stage. It's Tom Choi's point was very, very salient, and that's it's about growing our business and what do we do to grow our business. And one of the ways is we have to bring new things, new technologies, new approaches. And if we do that, and by the way, we more than welcome new competition, people to compete with us, because we all need to grow this space. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. I personally don't think a $15 million launch is going to happen tomorrow. So I think you've got many years, probably will retire. I certainly have retired already, but you'll all have retired before we get to a $15 million launch. So I don't think that's bad. But I do think Ariane Space, you're going to have to deal with a half-price launch. Mr. Fu, you're going to have to deal with no market. You're going to have to deal with a half-price launch. Nakamura-san, you haven't got a market now, and you're going to have to it's going to get even worse. So the problem for Japanese, the price is just so high at the moment. But you're sitting there and you're going to say you're going to keep it half. Do you think you'll really keep it half?
Actually, we do have a half-price launch, which is a dual launch.
Could we buy two?
Yes.
No, dual price launch is the same thing. He's saying the same thing, and he can have a dual price.
Yeah, but the mass is different.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yeah. But once you get to your launch price, you don't think there's going to be any temptation to put the price up a bit?
I can
Is
only.
Gwen still in the room?
I'm sorry.
Gwen's still in the room?
Yeah, I can only address what has been spoken many times by our CEO, Elon, and that's long term. It's about access to space, and the only way that we're going to make a big difference in doing things like interplanetary travel is by reducing the cost of access to space. So it would be counter to our long term goal to do exactly that.
But nobody here is interested in really going beyond geostationary. I mean, that's where we're all sitting, I think, at the moment, in this room anyway.
Understand.
But yeah. But you think that there's going to be no temptation to put the price up once you
I can say that we've already gone to the marketplace with, without being specific, with some packages where we're actually significantly reducing the cost of access to space.
Mm. And when are you going to have the same capability as Ariane and Cooler?
In terms
When are you going to, in terms of mass?
A mass. We've got the Falcon 9, upgraded Falcon 9 that we're going to be launching here shortly. And we do have the Falcon Heavy that Gwen showed earlier. We'll be doing a test flight sometime in 2014 on this, and that will be our mass equivalent to everything they're offering, actually quite a bit more.
Mr. Fu, what are you going to do?
You see, we do not have the market. That's the bad thing. I think actually we were just troubled by the political issue between China and the U.S. Yes. That's for some time. For us, we have one of the most reliable rockets in the world, in the market. But many customers come to us, but they were just constrained by this kind of export license. But for us, I think we do have a strong domestic demand. You can see China's launch activities are quite active. In the past 2 years, we launched about 18 times. I think that's number 2 in the world in terms of number of launches. And also, we have some demand from some niche countries. I mean, for us, our strategy is to package our Chinese satellites plus the Long March as a package and offer to those customers who do not have much experiences in space. I think this strategy currently is working well, but I do not, this morning I had some discussion with some people here that they say China is helping those countries that they do not have any orbit slot or this kind of thing. For those countries who have the space ambition, particularly to have their own communication satellite system, they are troubled by the problem of orbit slot, about the frequency. So we are helping them, but orbit slot is not an asset of China or any single country, so there needs a lot of coordination. It is really a kind of thing we have to think about how to expand our current market with the Chinese satellite plus the Long March launch services. And also, we hope that one day these kind of political issues can also be resolved. This issue has troubled us for quite some time, over 10 years' time. So we hope there could be a kind of solution to this. In the meantime, China is keep on developing its own space technology, not only in the launch vehicle, but also in the satellite. So I think one day maybe the Chinese satellite can be more competitive than today. So I think that by that time, our situation will be much better.
Well, I think it's not that as digital as you think it is. I mean, if you look at the marketplace right now, I mean, if you look at the mass we carry, it's different class than SpaceX. And if you want to compete in the SpaceX arena of half price, you look at half the Proton, right? You would be in a mass class that, so I don't think the answer is really digital right now. I think we all have our own niches, and depending really I think it totally depends on how the satellite market, develops, the masses that the satellites will become with the electric propulsion and the high throughput satellites. So that
but I think everybody here said, the satellites are going to get bigger antennas.
Well, I don't think
I mean,
that's true.
One type of satellite will get bigger, more antennas.
Right.
You'll need bigger.
Right.
What's your biggest fairing at the moment?
We have a 5-meter fairing.
5-meter fairing. You have.
Can I just throw something on this? You know?
No, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You'll get what? You haven't got a 5-meter fairing.
Currently, we have 4.2-meter fairing, but for the next generation, it's 5-meter fairing.
Yeah, and you've got 5.2.
5.2.
And Nakamura-san,
4 meter and also 5 meter.
5-meter fairing. So everyone's going to get bigger. Sorry, Richard. No.
It's okay. Your question and Barry's answer and the whole question of price is amazingly determined by quantity. You know, and I think there's something that I always find rather mysterious, and that is, you know, why, ever since I've been in this business, the market for satellites has always been 25 satellites per year. You know, that's basically, the satellites have got bigger, but the number of satellites has never increased. Now, I can't help thinking that there is a bit of physics involved in this. You know, we're on a spherical planet, therefore it's a circle around the equator, and there's 360 degrees, and you've got to have a couple of these degrees, you know, separation. So I think we're in a situation, I'm sure the gentleman in front of me can correct me, we're in a market where actually there is a natural limit to the number of satellites. So I don't see that we're going to be launching millions of satellites, because where are you going to put them?
No, I think.
And that will determine the price. You know, you asked, or somebody on the previous panel asked Bill Weller, you know, reduce your price. Well, you know, if you're producing half a dozen or a dozen satellites a year, you don't have volume. You know, Barry's right. If we could get real volume, we can bring the price down. But in this market, you know, where are you going to put all these satellites? Where are you going to get the volume from?
Yes.
Okay,
I was
seven.
gonna
Yeah, but I
say,
mean, we're not talking.
You know, you can have a lot of
When
satellites.
you entered
out
the
there. You've got-
business, Richard, they were doing a lot of spacing. They're hardly spacing now.
Yeah.
And the technology will continue to improve.
But what I've noticed is that, you know, I've been in this business quite a long time, and we've competed with, you know, when the Proton first came into the market, really, really low prices, and then we've had higher prices. I mean, you know, everybody's talking about the lowest prices, but at the moment in time, we're finding that the market is supporting the highest prices we've seen. So, you know, prices aren't going down; they're very high at the moment, and so. What's amazing, though, is the price goes down, the price goes up. We seem to see zero flexibility, elasticity. No matter what the price is, we still seem to get 25 satellites a year. You know, I don't understand it.
If you look in the rearview mirror, you're correct.
Yeah, but you're looking out the windscreen, you're saying.
Yes.
But it is true. Ariane has been very reticent to talk about SpaceX ever being successful. I mean, all the time you criticise SpaceX. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
True. No. I think
It's a dream.
Look, I think what they've done is good, and it's amazing. They've got to the space station. That's very, very good. I think some of the things they've done, you know, they've got good engineers. You know, and they're doing a good job. But the idea that, you know, we're going to have a $15 million launch. Yeah, well, if you show it to me, you know,
the $15 million a little bit. But, you know, today we don't. I mean, Kula had your satellites, your rockets fail every now and again because somebody keeps pieces of rag in the fuel lines or whatever. But that's just a fact. You know, you've had a really good record, and so your competition has been fairly limited. But SpaceX, I think, seems to be doing okay. I mean, so you're going to be highly successful, aren't you, Barry?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Do you have an interest in this, Pierre?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, my SpaceX shares ran out. I think that's.
You still have
Yeah. But don't you think Ariane should say, okay, you know, we're going to be doing this? Perhaps the answer is a bigger satellite. You know, get bigger. Everybody says that, you know, they're going to get the satellites are going to get bigger, or you're going to put 3 on the launch or 2 on the launch. You've got that capability. You could get bigger.
As I say, you know, at the moment we don't see this fantastic, limitless requirement for satellites. No. And I think that's part of the problem.
But satellites aren't generally limited by space in the sky or orbital slots. They're normally limited by the demand for them because nobody can afford to put them up, and there's no demand. I mean, that's one of the problems. You put 2 satellites up and you've got no demand, you go bankrupt. So you don't, and that's what limits the real supply. But you've got O3b going up. They got quite a few. You've had Iridium going up. Your Global Star, I don't know how they got their business plan approved, but so there are more satellites. It's just the fact that
Well,
How are you
hang
gonna
on,
put
if you
together?
think, I mean, actually, I mean, if
You're
you
talking
want
about launches more than satellites.
if the market was to be really significantly increased, the people that could do that are the operators. Because when I look at the figures, you know, operators are making return on investment about 70%. So if this market could really boost, if operators reduce their margins, put lower prices into the market, we would then see this massive, massive requirement, and then we could all reduce our prices.
From an operator's perspective, you just heard Tom Choi saying that today he was selling a KU band capacity for 500,000.
Yeah.
There's no way you can build and operate a satellite at 500,000 for a normal thing. I mean, you just go bankrupt.
You just proven my point. The market's not there.
No, the market's not there. I think that's the point. But for each launch, it's going to be a lot more competitive. Where's Proton see the market going?
Sorry?
Where does Proton see the market going?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, right, it depends on, I mean, we think there's going to be like 25 a year, and we think we'll get 6 or 7 each year. But, you know, you have to address the different markets. And at this point in time, I think the mass of the satellites, where it's going is indefinite because of the electric propulsion and other requirements. So they'll either be large ones or small ones, and it depends each launch vehicle how we are configured in what launch mass we can carry. I think that will tell us in the future.
But Nakamura-san, you're really doing government launches. I mean, you're doing some commercial, but mostly government. Where do you think the government launches are going to go in Japan for you?
Regarding the satellite mass, we think probably the following situation covers this market. First is less than 4 metric ton, as Akura mentioned, such a all-electric system with all-electric system. And other is probably more than 6 metric ton, we think. So therefore, corresponding to such a situation, we need to seek some solution, like the HX or H3, which is a next generation launch vehicle. And in order to reduce the pricing, we think probably there are some solution. As you know, we MHI is not only the launch service provider, but also the manufacturer company, like the SpaceX. So therefore, we are able to optimize something like all the system or the probably procurement or manufacturing operation or something like others. So therefore, this is probably first solution. And also other solution is something like to apply the commercial equipment or component in automobile industry or other industry, we think.
But don't you see that you know, the same as the operators are talking about, they want, you know, re-steerable antennas, it's a matter of flexibility. Haven't you got to decide that you can do every type of launch out there, or are you going to specialize? I mean, you Richard, have found an issue where you said that for some, Ariane space is too expensive, so you want a dual launch. You've then got the problem of finding 2 satellites ready at the same time. And then you said, we're going to build another small one that you're going to take up the Ariane 6, isn't it? Ariane 6.
Yeah.
So you're actually taking the small ones away from the Ariane 5. How you put that dynamic together, that you've got two offerings, one's actually taking away from the Ariane 5?
It's a delicate switchover, but the decision has been made that in the long term, we will actually move towards catering for more single launches, more dedicated launches, and that's what the Ariane 6 will do, because we're finding a lot of missions, low Earth orbit missions, orbital missions. You know, Ariane 5 into low Earth orbit is 20 tons. There are not too many people that need 20 tons into low Earth orbit.
Not one satellite, except
So
the NSA, I think, is doing that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And Europe doesn't launch that sort of.
Yes.
So Ariane 5 is not suitable for that part of the market. Now, we have to go through, to get to Ariane 6, we need to prolong the life of Ariane 5, and so we need to make it more flexible than it is. And so what we're doing with Ariane 5 is in a low-risk evolution of the current vehicle. Some satellite manufacturers are making their satellite bigger, and so they're not going to fit under the fairing in the future, so we're going to have a longer fairing. and also we will need to have a little bit more lift capacity. And so we've got various stages of evolving the current vehicle to give us more flexibility so we can put two bigger satellites together. There's the likelihood of going to an even bigger version of the Ariane 5, but that hasn't been fully decided, or whether we go to the Ariane 6. And then when we go to the Ariane 6, we will switch over to doing dedicated launches. It's rather strange, really, because for years we were criticized for doing dual launches. We were the only people doing it, but now everybody does dual launches. Proton's doing a dual launch, and SpaceX is going to do dual launches.
Not doing
and
dual
we're moving
launches.
towards the. We're going to move towards the dedicated.
Well, no, they're not
launch.
doing dual
They're
launch.
putting
We
two
don't
on
do
the.
dual
We're looking at doing two. I think they are. Aren't you? Aren't you?
SpaceX now.
ABS?
No.
No? Okay. And so that's interesting. So we will be moving towards that, and so we've got to respond to the market requirement, and we will try and do it in the most competitive fashion possible.
By reducing prices.
Actually, Peter, if I can
If we can,
add a comment, I actually would add that Ariane 6 is an effort, a good effort, to try to become competitive in the marketplace. So I think it's actually a good effort on ESO's part.
And it probably is partially due to you guys. You have to admit it.
It may be,
I
but
think part of it is also because of the Angara family which is catered with common elements to build different different price points. So until that comes on board, we have to use what we have right now and get it optimized.
Is it going to be as reliable as the Ariane, do you think?
There's no reason why it wouldn't be. Reliability is very much related to the management and the systems. Do you have quality control in place? Do you have quality control in the procedures at the launch site? I mean, I cite an example. We have managed nearly 30 Soyuz launches, and not one of them has failed. During that period of time, Soyuz launches have failed, other launches. So I think it's very much to do with your quality control. No. We're engineers. We don't gamble. My company is run by engineers. And it's quality control and management procedures. We have very good management procedures. That's why we've done more than 10 years without a failure.
You agree with that, Kula?
Sorry?
You agree with what he just said? Were you listening? Yeah. I've noticed that somebody's just trying to ignore Richard. I don't know why. But you've had failures, Kula, so how can you is that your failure? Is that?
And we've learned from our failures, and we've been, put in place reliability efforts, right, that address those failures. And I think you'll see a long string of successes.
Well, you're building everything yourself.
yes.
Is that the best way of doing it? A bit like the Ariane.
It's a combination of some philosophy and definitely some necessity. In large part, as a launch vehicle service provider, in a industry, and let's say related industries that are much bigger. Let's take aluminum, lithium. We consume a fraction of any automobile supplier, any automobile manufacturer. So the parts we consume, valves, other things. We consume very small volumes, so if we're going to assure that we have really good supply, in many cases we have to do it ourselves. And I'm sorry, not only supply but quality.
Talk about quality. What about quantity? I mean, a Falcon 9 uses what, 27 engines?
Falcon 9 is 10 engines.
No, sorry.
Falcon Heavy is 27.
Heavy.
That's correct.
27.
Yes.
That's a lot of engines. Have you got the throughput to do that?
Yes, the factory is sized to do that. If you come to our factory, you will see engines coming out on an almost daily basis these days.
How many do you need to do a week to meet your manifest projections for Falcon 9?
Probably won't get specific, but you can see that we're sized for 400 engines a year.
That's amazing.
We can peak up to that.
Yeah. You, Richard, you're sort of halfway house, really. You're an agent for somebody that's building all of the engines. I think everything is produced in-house within your supplier.
Well, we have a chain of suppliers.
I thought it was all yours.
No. Arianespace actually is the marketing and sales organization for the European space industry and the various component suppliers. What they've done, they've reorganized the industrial chain, and it does give them a competitive advantage, I think, at this moment in time. Their organization probably will allow them in the long term, personally, I would be, if I was you, I'd be selling that and not, selling, you're going to be launching 100 times a year. I mean, I don't think that's realistic.
Don't compete with them.
I mean, I think you guys don't sell very well. You could do better. You shouldn't present things that are not realistic.
Only overturned by what we actually accomplished.
Yeah. Mr. Fu, you're an agent for your supplier. Do you monitor their quality, or you just take what they've got?
I think for us, our Chinese system, we do have a kind of comprehensive industry chain. We can produce everything within one of our group. I mean, the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation. So most of the major subsystems were built within the group. So I think we can monitor, we can ensure the quality of our products. So that's why what we have in the past 10 years.
I think one of the problems is you'd have a job to buy anything outside, wouldn't they? Most of the technology, nobody allows you to buy it, so you've got to develop your own.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we do have a monitor our subsystems, our suppliers regarding the launcher and everything. And also, we take the same approach as other launch service providers done. Sometimes the customer can also give us a good advice, and even they give us some pressure to make good products. That's good.
Considering your situation, do you think China should open up its market to overseas satellite operators? Because this morning, China was almost being criticized for not opening up its market. Yet, you've got no market. It's very difficult.
You're talking about the satellite services?
Yeah, I'm just saying that on one hand, people criticize China for not allowing people to sell satellite capacity in China, but you're not allowed to do very many things. I mean, it's very difficult for you.
But I think regulatory issues are everywhere. But even in China, I would see not only one or two suppliers are providing the satellite communication services. I think more. Even most of the major satellite operators in the world, they are providing services to the Chinese entities, right? That's true. But I think China is also in the process of opening up every sector of the market, not only in space, but in everywhere. So I do believe the competition in China is becoming more and more intense.
And certainly the restriction on your being able to buy satellite items, rocket items, has certainly helped your manufacturing. I mean, your spacecraft manufacturing is still fairly immature compared to Europe and to the States, but it's coming on leaps and bounds. I mean, it's helping you in some ways.
Yes, I to some extent I agree with you. Our satellite industry also had a long history, but for communication satellite in recent years, I mean, our first large capacity satellite like DFH-4 was only launched in 2007, so it's only 6 years. But I think the longest in orbit life is like 5 years for our DFH-4 satellite. For this communication satellite, we cooperate also with the European industry. We do have a lot of partners in Europe. We buy a lot from the Europe regarding the communication satellite to meet the customers' demands.
Is export credit helping you sell your satellites?
Because we manufacture everything in California, in large part, no, we have no export credits to use. So that's not something we have to have as an advantage.
But from a foreign provider, we can use EXIM financing.
If you're talking about EXIM finance, absolutely. Yes, we do use that.
And are you going to do that? You're not doing EXIM. You haven't got an EXIM
we've started
insurance.
Export XCR, which is the export insurance. It's same as EXIM in the States. And we started working that right now with the Russian. And some of the Western banks are now looking at it, and we're going to provide that.
From the Russian government,
yes,
basically.
Yes, but banks like HSBC are looking at it and going to provide.
And when will that be available?
They're working right now. So we're going to start working with some customers with that.
Mr. Fu, do you have export credit facilities, or you just give a cheap satellite and a cheap launch?
No, we do have the support from the Chinese banks regarding the export credit. Yeah.
And what about insurance? At the moment, the SpaceX insurance rate is not quite almost as good as Ariane. You see that going to get better?
Certainly hate to quote the insurers because they certainly have their own files on what they want to quote. But we have been rather competitive in the marketplace. That is a true statement.
What about you? What's your rates like, Kula?
You mean
Sorry, Kula.
Considering the recent failure earlier
Yes.
this year, late last year, they're high, but as we succeed and proceed with our launches, we've already launched 4, and we'd launch about 10 by the end of this year. So as we build our what do you call reliability reputation, they'll probably come down. It's actually the insurance is really based on the capacity rather than rates.
Yes. Yeah, it's not nothing to do with it seems a very strange situation. It seems to be more capacity in the launch industry than the success ratio.
And you just imagine SpaceX has launched 5 launches, and we have launched like 307 something, and their rate's lower than ours. So it's really capacity and I guess the interpretation of the market to evaluate risk. So that's another thing.
I'd add a dimension there. I think that the insurance market is actually a pretty intelligent group, and they've been also looking at things like design. So, for example, our engine-out capability is something that's worth a fair amount of credibility for them, and that certainly helped us in the marketplace.
History would agree with Kula and not you on that case. Yes, Mr.
Regarding the insurance rates, though we did not gain any contract for commercial launch services. However, we think we are able to receive a probably good number compatible to other launch service provider due to the high reliability. We think our MHI are most confident in maintaining the high reliability. For example, we control all the data in 2 sigma, within 2 sigma, even if flight requirement is within 6 sigma. So therefore, such a, for example.
Yeah, unfortunately, Kula's right. The insurance industry seems to go more on how much capacity is out there than how reliable you are. I'm sure he looks at you very heavy, Barry, but I tell you, it seems to be, you'd agree.
Yes.
It's totally capacity. I mean, I remember Richard for many, many years standing up saying, why aren't we getting a cheaper rate? Why aren't we getting a cheaper rate? Because it was absolutely nothing to do with capacity, unless you had 2 failures in a row, and then nobody wanted to insure against you.
I think what really demonstrates it the most is if you look at the insurance rates, 9/11, shortly afterwards, there's a massive hike in launch insurance rates. Well, what did 9/11 have to do with the launches? Nothing. It was just that the insurance market took a massive hit, everybody got concerned, and insurance rates went up for rockets.
Okay. Anybody in the audience wants to ask some more interesting questions? Anyone at all?
Shy group.
Okay. I think we've either covered them or they've all gone to sleep. I think the sleeping is the point, I think. Yeah. But, okay, looking at multiple small launches, you've got O3B, we've got people that want multiple launches on the same satellite. Yes. You've got that capability now. Mm-hmm. You can do that. You can do that. Of SpaceX looking at that, you said...
Orbcom, Ariane.
Yes. So you're all going to have that. Okay. Do you think that's going to be a market that's a growth market?
It's a function of, part of this is this access to space. Again, it was reflected earlier about where the market may go. If access to space gets cheap enough, then the whole architecture, fundamental architecture, may change. I mean, Richard talked about elasticity, and elasticity is not something that changes overnight. It will take time for certain functions to exist, lower cost, and then from there, satellite manufacturers and satellite operators to take a different look because they in fact can get to space cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, Ms. Tu, you've got the Chinese GPS system going up, yes? How many satellites per launcher is that?
Actually, currently for China's Beidou navigation system you're talking about, right now they have 14 satellites in operation, just covering the Asia-Pacific region. I think by 2020, they're going to have around 30 satellites and they have a global coverage. I think for the LEO, the Chinese Beidou navigation satellite is a mixed constellation. They have GEO, they have MEO. And for us, we also have an eye on the LEO market, like the Iridium, this kind of system. in 1990s, at that time, there's a boom for this kind of constellation. And also, we are part of the efforts to launch like the Iridium constellation. I think nowadays, there are more and more countries, they have the ambition to develop space technology. And many people, many countries, they start to develop their own domestic capability in building the small satellites. For this kind of small satellite, many people are complaining that access to space is one of the biggest obstacle for them to overcome. There are not so many opportunities offered at the piggyback passenger or these kind of things. We heard of these complaints. Last year, I was here, I talked about we are trying to to attract those customers coming to China. Because for Long March, we have a variety of launchers in our fleet. We can use different launchers for different missions. This is really our advantage. We have the GEO launcher like the Long March 3B, and also we have the small launcher like Long March 2C or 2D. So we are trying to make efforts to get into this kind of market. And also we find out that in this market, there are less restrictions comparing to the GEO satellites market. So I think maybe this is the niche market we should make more efforts on.
Ariane, you've had a lot of experience at launching multiple satellites. What do you think the future is?
You've got to maintain flexibility, and we're in a position where, as I said, we were actually now getting competition. Previously, we never had competition in the dual launch area. And so, you have the Proton Duo, etc. And so, it's making the dual launch, the competition for the smaller satellites is getting more difficult. And so in the long term, then that's why we're going to move towards Ariane 6. And before we go to Ariane 6, we've got to actually be able to launch not a big one and a small one, but a big one and a medium one. We need more capacity. We're having to stretch the capacity that we can launch. We have to grow the capacity of the Ariane 5 because to maintain the dual launch, we need to be able to launch higher and higher mass. So that, there's a point where we don't really want to build a vehicle that's even bigger than the current Ariane 5 because we said for part of the market, for observation satellites and low Earth orbit, it's already too big. So we're in a position where, in the long term, we do see that the path will be towards actually at the Ariane 6 vehicle.
But just to wrap up, we've got to the end. The consensus from the operators and the launchers that there are going to be a requirement for very large satellites, and I think, and they'll have more antennas. I think more antennas on a satellite is more problem sometimes than the more mass. At the moment, the number of antennas are limited by the size of the fairing. They've got bigger, they're still going to get longer. I think you're going to see more longer fairings. And I think the only way Ariane, I think, can compete with you guys is get bigger quicker, I would have thought.
Yes.
And really be the big guys, and you've got to catch up with them. Price-wise, I'm sure Ariane price is going to go down. I think SpaceX price will go up. I'm sorry, Mr. Fu, I think ITAR is going to be there forever. The US will insist it. Proton, I'm sorry, but I think you've just got to worry about launch failures every now and again. It just happens. But don't worry, because the insurance market doesn't seem to care. And Mr. Nakamura-san, you're in the best position. Keep going with the Japanese market. It's great. They'll keep paying your prices and you'll be successful. And it's a great vehicle. I mean, it's fantastic. Anyway, so on that, we'd like to say thank you very much to Marsh, our sponsor, for this event. And thank you to the panelists. Thank you.